So what I was saying before is, whenever you ask for anything, we try to make it available for you in the meeting. Obviously, a lot of you, a couple of weeks ago, asked for, due to the tragedy that happened at the church a couple of weeks ago, you asked for about wills and estate planning, and nobody is better to speak about this but Mr. Rubin. Adam is part of a practice in East Brunswick here. He's one of the partners. It's called Rubin, Furman, and Rubin. So I asked Adam to join us. Normally what we do, obviously, is we first look whether we have the expertise in the church. And as many lawyers as we have at Holmdel, we don't really have an estate planning attorney. So that's why I asked Adam to join us. We're very happy to have him today. I gave him, some of you sent questions ahead of time, so I gave it to him. Adam is going to give us a presentation first, about 30-35 minutes, and then he will open it up for questions. So please hold your questions to the end. Let him just go through. You need to understand the basis of the difference between a will and a trust, and a revocable trust, irrevocable trust. You need to understand that idea first, because every situation, every person is going to be different. And therefore, once you have that platform of understanding, then he will be able to answer all of your questions. Okay? Please welcome Adam.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Tony, would you like to set up the presentation? I want to thank everyone for having me. I'm very excited. I want to apologize first. It took us about double the time the GPS said, and I don't want to tell you how, I was blessed to come here because I was driving very fast, so someone was on my side, so. But I really appreciate, I understand you're taking time on a Friday evening, and I want to thank you, and I know Tony prepared some handouts as well.
Yeah, I'm going to put it on the board.
Okay. So Adam, we also have people on the live stream.
Wow.
Yeah, they're watching online.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, most of the.
Wow, we're all over the place now. Put that.
And I should stay seated, correct? For the
I
camera.
think if you wish to stand, that's
If you want, we
fine.
can adjust it.
Just face the camera.
I'll do it. It's okay. I can, whatever. I'm happy to sit. I like to sit. This is beautiful. I love this clubhouse. Or this event center.
I'm عندنا ميه 15
Whatever you like. Thank you so much.
You can feel free to look at it.
Okay.
Can you tell me which one, the first one? Oh, the whole thing.
Yeah, they have one.
Thank you very much.
One of the things that I should have mentioned about Adam is he also is a tax attorney. A lot of the things I know involves how you will be taxed. So you might want to ask questions about this. The taxation in relation to also the will and the estate.
Okay.
And in terms of changing the slide,
I want to give him the mouse. Oh, yeah.
it's whatever works. Again, whatever. Is that okay? Or would you
Let's
prefer?
let it do it, because I'm going to sit over there.
Okay, this way you can enjoy it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. I want to thank everyone for inviting me tonight. I really appreciate it. It's a tremendous honor. I live in Holmdel, so I have the pleasure of driving by the church often, and actually on my way to work, and it's beautiful. So I've never been inside, but I appreciate, again, thank you for having me. And again, a friend of Ehab's is a friend of mine, so I'm happy to stay as late as possible, answer all questions, give as much guidance as possible. Okay. As Ehab mentioned, I did prepare a short presentation just for some background. He had sent me a list of questions. And what we did is we have a presentation we usually do, but we changed it based on the questions. And it addresses most of the questions, and then the one or two it did not address, I can start the question session with those and then open it up to whatever you would like. Okay. So what we did is a lot of people are confused when they hear about estate planning. Okay, they're unsure what exactly it means. What we did is we broke it into 4 layers for you to think about. Okay, the first layer of estate planning. Well, before that, I should say the reason that estate planning is so important. Obviously, you know, it's to tie up loose ends to make sure that if you decide what happens in your future, whether it's end of life treatment, right? Whether it's when you pass away, whether it's the treatment of your children, or even who can handle your finances. But I know family is incredibly important to everyone here, and this is a way to make sure that your family is going to get along and honor your wishes. Now, the reason, one of the...
This is the right one.
Thank you. Tony can tell you I'm not very tech savvy. And you see me point to, that's Tony, she runs the office. So yeah. Now, 70%, it's so great you're doing this, okay? It's so great you're here, because believe it or not, 70% of Americans do not have their affairs in order. Let's call it what you want. This isn't a topic people necessarily enjoy to speak about. It's not something to do. So many people say, I will do it, I know I need to, and I'll get to it. But yet we don't make it a priority. So the difference is today, by at least exploring, you're taking a step, you're educating yourself, okay? Now, the reason I mentioned our firm, if you look at all of our brochures or whatever it is, we have the words empowering your legacy everywhere. Because in our world, that's what estate planning is. It's a chance to write your story in the manner you want. Now, again, I know this is an overwhelming topic. That's why 70% of people avoid it. So what we did is we broke it into 4 layers. The first layer is, because I know everyone always talks about estate planning and they always think, oh, the wills. I need a will. I need a trust. But we have to worry about number 1 before we protect other people. So the first layer of estate planning is protecting you. The way to protect yourself, okay, is you need documents where if you're incapacitated or you have to go to the hospital, the right people will act and be able to help you. So has anyone here heard of a power of attorney?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, good. Smart crew. Right. And what is it?
We're not Indians.
And what does a power of attorney do?
It's like a proxy getting someone else to act on your behalf. Yeah.
Absolutely. So a power of attorney is an essential document to have.
Consent?
I beg your pardon?
Is it consent? Consenting to somebody?
What you do is you give someone access, you consent to them having access to your financials. Okay? It's very important again because if you have to go to the hospital or a family member has to go to the hospital, we want to make sure the right people can help you. Okay? Now there's a lot of powers of attorney. Okay? The most common one, which is the only one our firm does, is called a general durable power of attorney. What that means is the general means that it's going to cover all powers. Okay? So if there's anything you need, you don't want it too limited in scope. If you need someone to access your IRA and sell your house, your power of attorney should cover both of those layers. Now, the durable. A durable power of attorney, when I tell it to you, you're not initially going to like the sound of it. But I'll tell you why we do it this way. A durable power of attorney means the person named can access your finances at this time. They don't need to wait for you to become incapacitated. Okay? The alternative to a durable power of attorney is something called a springing power of attorney. A springing power of attorney is a power of attorney that doesn't take effect until you become incapacitated. Now, whenever we talk to clients, they all say, oh, I want that one. I don't want anyone to have access to my finances unless I have to go to the hospital, right? Unless I can't do it myself. Because in theory, that sounds terrific, right? But here's our issue and why our office won't do them and most estate planning attorneys won't. If I need help with my finances and my wife is my power of attorney, and it's what's called the springing power of attorney, that means before she can act, she has to get 2 letters from doctors and then present them to the institutions. We don't like that because we want the process to be seamless. If you're in the hospital, we don't want a spouse, we don't want children, we don't want a friend to have to scramble to try to find doctors to be able to sign off on it. Especially because getting older and a lot of incapacity is the gray area. Not everything is severity. We know this. We see this with loved ones. We see it with ourselves. When we get older, okay, you know, the memory can fade and it's very, very hard to pin it down on something. It's very hard to say this person's incapacitated, right? So the springing power of attorney, in theory, yeah, everyone loves it, right? It's a no-brainer, okay? But it doesn't work practically as well. So we always advise to have a general, durable power of attorney. I definitely advise all of you to consider that document. Now, the second document we do is called a living will. This is the second of protecting yourself. Has anyone here heard of a living will healthcare directive?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you know what it does? If not, don't worry, I'll tell you. But.
You can give me the details.
Okay.
Yes, you can write your wishes and, like, for example, do not resuscitate, you write it, so if you die, nobody will resuscitate it.
Terrific. I mean, that's not terrific, but thank you. That's exactly it. A lot of lawyers say the greatest gift you could give your family is having a modern, up-to-date living will. For all the reasons this gentleman just said. If you have a living will, you're going to outline your end-of-life wishes. Okay? You're also going to name the person who can talk to a doctor. Having this document removes a tremendous burden from your family. No one is sitting around wondering what you want, who you want to act. It's in the document, okay? And also, telling your family your end-of-life wishes is a great way to prevent people from wondering. That's a tremendous burden to put on a loved one, to try to say. Now, you can make their New Jersey living wills are not as imaginative as you think, okay? New Jersey's not like other states. It's a lot more restrictive what you can and can't write. So the New Jersey living will generally starts with 2 doctors declaring you incapacitated, okay? After 2 doctors say you're incapacitated and you're unconscious, then they want to talk to the family about end-of-life wishes. We have all sorts of living wills. You know, you can make it based on religious beliefs. You can make it based on personal beliefs. But it's such an important gift to give to the children and loved ones. If you don't have a living will or a power of attorney, and you need help, you become incapacitated, the process is called a guardianship. A guardianship is a process that we want to... Are there any retired judges in the crowd? Or judges? No. Okay. We want to avoid... A guardianship is where the court appoints someone to handle your affairs. Now, as a general rule, we want to avoid court because they shouldn't be involved in our decision making. But the state does try to protect you. So the process where the state tries to protect you is guardianship, okay? And this process, they'll go through a thorough process to have someone appointed to handle your affairs and your health decisions. Now, why do we want to avoid guardianship? Money, right? Second is it's delayed. Guardianships are only heard once every 60 to 90 days, you know? And also, you're not the one making the choice. The judge is. Now, the judge is going to do his best. He wants to honor your wishes. But it's his choice, not yours. Now, something very near and dear to my heart, I know Ehab mentioned it. I'm a tax attorney, okay? And I love talking tax. And everyone always comes in and they want to know, the first thing everyone wants to know about is what are the taxes when I pass away? So this is very important, and it's always changing. So if you rewatch the recording, the only thing I ask is, I'm going to say to the recording, this is in 2022 on September, what's the date, 16th?
16.
September 16th, 2022. So if you're counting on this any other day, you have to call me. New Jersey, does anyone remember a couple years ago, Governor Christie imposed a gas tax?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you, great. When he did that, the deal he made was he said, I'm gonna increase the price of gas, but I'm eliminating the estate tax. So as of 2022, this year, New Jersey does not have an estate tax. What New Jersey does have is an inheritance tax. The inheritance tax doesn't look at what you own, it looks at who's getting the assets, okay? So the inheritance tax, if you're going to leave assets to a child, a grandchild, a spouse, a parent, or a grandparent, the inheritance tax will not apply. Okay? The inheritance tax only applies if you want to leave assets to a friend, okay? Or a nephew, or a niece, or cousin, or brother, or sister. Then we have an inheritance tax issue, okay? Now, the federal government has an estate tax. Does anyone know the federal exemption amount right now?
No clue.
Okay, it's the old joke that lawyers say is right. I beg your pardon?
12,000 for single and 24 for couple.
The only thing he said 12,000 for a single, 24 for a couple. You have the numbers right. You're just missing a couple zeros. It's 12.06 million per person. That's why a lot of people don't talk about it. For a married couple, they get to leave 24 million. Now, the old joke is, it's never been this good to die, right? Because the exemption amounts are so high. Now, the exemption amounts are going to go down, but for the next 3 years, what happens is every year they're increased a little bit for inflation. Normally, we see them go up by 100,000 a year based on inflation. The 2023 estate exemption amount just came out this week, and lawyers are going crazy because the exemption amount based on this last year of crazy inflation is going up over $860,000.
Really?
Okay, sorry?
So it's become 20. It's become 20 or what?
It's
No, 80.
It's going from, I'm sorry, not 8 million, 800. So it's going to become close to 13 million per person. It's never jumped like this.
So around like 8% to 9%.
Yeah, which is, usually it goes up 100,000, maybe 150,000. This year, I've never seen anything like it.
It's good to die this year.
It'll be better to die next year. In 2025, the exemption amount is going back down to 6 million.
Oh,
6 what?
6 million,
6 million.
yes. If you have an exemption amount, if you're married, you get 12 million. But it's always changing, so it's something to keep an eye on, okay? It's hotly debated. If, obviously I'm not talking politics, but if a Republican's president versus Bernie Sanders is president, it will be very different. You guys know this. That's how politics work, okay? And here's the thing about the estate tax, which everyone gets worried about. If it applies, if you're over that 24 million, the rate is 40%. That's why sometimes you see when the uber wealthy, when they don't plan, and you see when they pass away, there's like a fire sale. It's crazy, they have to sell everything, right? So we see that, I don't know, are there any sports fans here? A lot? Does anyone know, this is a tough trivia question. Does anyone know who Joe Robbie is? It goes way back, this is tricky. Joe Robbie owned the Miami Dolphins many years ago, okay? Back when a lot of you were in diapers. And he passed away. And the team was worth, I think, $300 million. And the team, the family had to sell the team because what is 40% of $300 million? A lot. And they didn't have $120 million hanging around. So if that tax applies, look out, it's going to be bad. And again, the big caveat I'm going to tell you is we don't know the future in terms of tax. You know? I mean, whether it's New Jersey or federal, so you need to always keep an eye on it. Because it used to be, when New Jersey had an estate tax, does anyone know what the exemption used to be back in the day? 675. Which in New Jersey isn't that high, especially with houses and everything. I mean, it's not that high. Now, something that I know was written in, and a lot of people wanted me to talk about, is what is the big difference between a will and a trust? Okay, I get that question a lot, you know, that's one of the backbones of our firm. So everyone knows a will, everyone's familiar with a will on some level, right? What a will is it's a document that takes effect when you pass away. It's paper that describes your wishes. So it will say when I pass, I want my assets to pass to my cousin or my daughter, whoever you pick. For a will to be effective, this is very important, and no one thinks of this. For a will to be effective, you must go to probate. Okay? So everyone always says, I have a will, I don't have to go to probate. That's the biggest myth in estate planning. If you have a will and you pass away with assets in your name alone, without beneficiaries, you have to go to probate. So I want everyone to remember that.
And just for clarity, probate means I have to go, my wife and kids will have to go to court to be able
Correct.
to get this correct.
Correct. So what is probate, right? Probate, thank you, Ian. Probate is the court process to read the will. A will is paper, and what happens is the judge reads it and stamps it and makes the executor an official executor. You can't bring a copy of the will to the bank. You can't sell the house with a copy of the will. Now, a will, for what else does probate do? In probate, they resolve all disputes. They pay all creditors. They take an inventory of all the assets and get it to the right beneficiaries. Now, these are all good qualities of probate, right? This is why people like the probate process. But why are there so many articles everywhere you go about the importance of avoiding probate? When you open the Asbury Park Press, the Patch, even the Wall Street Journal, whatever you're reading, there's so many articles, here's how you avoid probate, or here's why you avoid probate. So here's the 4 big reasons that we find for you to avoid probate. The first, anytime you're in court, you're going to have court fees, right? And the executor in your will is entitled to a fee. Now, the executor fee is in your booklet, but it's hard to find. An executor is entitled to 5% of the first 200,000 of an estate. 3.5% of the next 800,000, and 2% for any amount over that. So the executor fee can get pretty big. Now, also an attorney's entitled to a fee when a will goes to probate. In New Jersey, we use a method for attorney fees called reasonable compensation. Now, a lot of times when you hear reasonable compensation, what are you thinking? It's reasonable. Thank you. Well, who do you think decides what's reasonable for attorney fees?
Attorney itself.
The judge with the lawyers. Yeah. Now you know why a lot of people don't like it, right? And probate's also a drawn-out process. In New Jersey, probate can take anywhere from 9 to 24 months because you have to give time for people to respond, right? Remember, when you're in court, the judge's goal is to be fair and thorough. They're not worried about things happening overnight. They want to extend it, okay? So probate can take 9 to 24 months. And the Division of Taxation puts a tax lien on any asset passing through probate. This means until New Jersey gives a thumbs up that our tax is due, you're only going to be able to release half of an account. So that's why we have a joke in our office that, you want to get back at someone, name them executor, because it can take a long time and be stressful. Probate's also open to the public. So are there any baseball fans in the crowd? I know we talk football. Any ball? Has anyone here heard of Ernie Banks?
Only soccer.
Only soccer? Any soccer fans? All right. Big soccer crowd, huh? All right. Well, we'll talk about the World Cup later, huh? Who's going to win? So, when Ernie Banks was a famous baseball player, and he passed away a couple of years ago, and he had a will which left everything to his girlfriend. This didn't go over well at all with his wife. But it gives new meaning to Let's Play 2 because there was a lot of fighting in the court. And Ernie Banks' legacy was now being tarnished, right? There was so much fighting in the court, so many disputes about what did it mean. Because wills are public, right? And scam artists, right? Scam artists are, scam artists are very out of control, right? There's so many issues with scam artists, okay? And we always joke that probate is a playground for scam artists. Why? Because with scam artists, who do scam artists like to take advantage of? There's two types of people.
Well,
Wealthy and those who are vulnerable, right? So probate for them is out of control. Because scam artists, right? Probate for them is out of control. Because scam artists go after, someone just lost a loved one, and they know there's money coming. So what we do, I Googled to prepare for tonight, how to make money off probate. And would you believe in less than half a second, 21 million links showed up? Think about that, right? How to make money off probate. 21 million links showed up. Because everyone loves to go after scam artists. They love to take advantage. Or everyone loves to go after families that are vulnerable. I can tell you stories where, we had a client whose father passed away. And there was a will. And when that will went to probate, the scam artist looked it up and called my client and said to her, "Hi, I work closely with Adam Rubin. Adam told me it's time for you to sell your father's house. I'm going to be the person who sells it," and sent them a contract to sell the house. Now, the young lady said, "Thank you very much." She got the contract to sell the house, and would you believe she was filling it out, and something gave her a light bulb went off. And she said, let me call the office and make sure this is Adam Rubin. And she called the office, and I never even heard of that company. But that's why sometimes probate has exposure, right? Now, if anyone here owns out-of-state property, okay, and you pass away, we have to go to probate in every state. So if anyone here owns property in Hawaii, you have property in Hawaii? No, not yet.
Right,
I won't tell them, attorney-client privilege.
overseas, we're kind of like,
Overseas? Okay, but
like Egypt.
Egypt? I don't know if we can put property in Egypt into a trust, I'm guessing not. But anywhere in the States, if you have a house in Connecticut, all right? Florida, who's Florida? All right, Florida, my Florida man. When you pass away, if you have a will and we go to probate, that means probate in Florida and New Jersey. So these are some of the reasons why people avoid probate. Again, the number one take home I want you to think about is wills go to probate. So what's the alternative to a will? This was not in my presentation. After getting the questions, we built these slides into the presentation. The alternatives to a will is a revocable living trust. Now, has anyone here heard of a trust? All right, great. To understand a trust, there's two big parts to a trust. Excuse me. The first part of a trust, think of a trust like a box, right? Or well, the first part of a trust actually is the contract. Think of a contract which has three big things. When we're alive, we're in complete control. If anyone becomes incapacitated, here's who's taking over. When we pass away, here's who's getting the assets. So the first part of a trust, a living trust, is those three things. Alive, control. Incapacitated, here's who takes over. Third, you pass away, here's who gets it. Now, for the trust to work, we need to put assets into the trust. So I want everyone to think of the trust as a box, right? Just any box. And right now people, and this is for today's presentation, we're gonna call this young couple Bill and Mary, right? So right now, these two can own their assets any number of ways. They could be in the husband's name, they could be in the wife's name, or they could be joint. What we're gonna do is take it out of their name and put it into the name of the trust, okay? So everything gets retitled to the name of the trust. So we're gonna call it the Jones Trust. So the two big parts of the trust to understand are the one, that contract which said whatever they wanted, and two, that would retitle the assets so they're owned by the trust, okay? Now, to further understand the trust, because these were a lot of the questions about what is a trustee, what is a trustor. To further understand the trust, I want people to understand there's three positions in any trust, okay? The first position in a trust is the trustor. That's the owner of the assets. That's the person who puts the assets into the trust, okay? That's the owner of the assets. They put everything in. The next position in a trust is the trustee. That's the manager of the trust. They buy and sell things. They handle the day-to-day activities of the trust. Okay? So you have the person who set it up. You have the person managing it, handling the day-to-day activities of the trust. And third, from a root word benefit, you have the beneficiary of the trust. And any trust ever created has these three positions. So there's the person who set it up, okay? There's the person managing it. And there's the beneficiary, the person who gets to enjoy it, okay? Wait, oh, fell behind you. And now, the reason that living trusts are so popular, okay, and living trusts are revocable, which was another one of the questions. The reason revocable living trusts are so popular is because you could be all three positions. So in this trust, that couple, Bill and Mary, they could be trustors. They could write their own trust. They could manage their own trust. Okay? So they would handle all the day-to-day activity of the trust. And third, and I think this is the most important, they can be the beneficiary of the trust. They can use it. They can enjoy it. So this trust is set up by them. This trust is set up by them. Excuse me. Okay, there we go. It's set up by them. They're enjoying it and it's for their benefit. And when it's in this trust, they have full access to it. And the reason people do these trusts is because these trusts avoid probate. So the big difference between a will and a trust is a trust avoids probate. Now there's a reason though, so that's the big difference. But remember, it's very important. You have to put the assets into that trust. Otherwise, you pass away with something in your name, we're going to probate. Okay?
Just to clarify, my wife and I own the house. We take the title of the house and now we name it in the name of the trust, and that we change the title to the trust.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if you have a bank account, if you have any assets, the same as Ehab just said, you put those assets into the trust. And by doing that, you avoid probate. Yes?
So if you do the house, which is owned by the husband and wife, the mortgage company would not mind doing that?
So the question, I'll repeat the question because I have the microphone in case people can't hear it. The question was, if you put the house in a trust, will the mortgage company have an issue with it? The answer is absolutely not. Okay? A mortgage, the mortgage company won't have an issue with it because they're not allowed. And because you still have control and access to it, so technically it's illegal for them to do anything with the mortgage. Okay?
And then Adam, you said that the trustee is the manager of the trust.
Yes.
Then, in that case, who's gonna become the manager, and does the husband or the wife, do they still have like access to do any changes or not?
Okay, so that's a terrific question. So I'll answer them backwards if that's okay. The first question is, does the husband and wife have access to make changes? As long as they're alive and they have capacity, they can make changes anytime.
Even if there is a trustee? Even if there is a trustee?
Yes, even if there is a trustee.
Do they have to go back to the trustee to notify
No, they do
them,
not.
whatever?
No, they do not. But remember, the husband and wife are the trustee in the beginning. They're all three.
Who's the beneficiary? Still alive.
I beg your pardon?
Beneficiaries, you mentioned the beneficiary.
Beneficiaries should be everyone's favorite.
Yeah, beneficiaries could be more than the trustee, like more people.
It can, but usually when people set up a trust, because it's their money, they're the beneficiary. So the concept of the trust, of this type of trust, there's about 1 million types of trust. But the concept with this type of trust is that you set it up, you set it up, which is the trustor, you're managing it, and you're the beneficiary. You can occupy all three positions. That's the concept of the trust.
Can you have more beneficiaries?
Absolutely. You can have many beneficiaries.
Can you categorize them? Who's going to be the first beneficiary and second beneficiary?
Yes, you can have hundreds of beneficiaries, but usually the beneficiaries don't come into play until you pass away, the others. Like in my trust, I have, it's my wife and my 2 daughters, Olivia and Talia, okay? Olivia and Talia do not have access to my trust until my wife and I pass away. Okay.
So if the bank, I get my mortgage with, put a statement on the contract that I share the house with my wife. And both of us our name on the title of the house. And they put a statement there that if any one of us passed away, God forbid, the owner of the house will be the spouse. Is that need to be part of the trust or the will, if it is included there? Yes, maybe we need to put it for the children, if both of us passed away. So I need to clarify this point.
So all the deed needs to say, when you have a house, all the deed needs to say is that the owner of the house is the trust. We don't want the deed to say more. Trusts are private. So the trust will write all that language. You know, the trust is about 150 pages.
Adam, that's not his question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
His question was if his name and his wife's name are already in the contract, and the contract says if he dies, the property goes to the wife. If the wife dies, the property goes to the husband. In this case, does he still have to do a trust, or he's protected already?
When you say contract, do you mean deed?
The deed.
Okay, so if the deed is owned, if you own a property, husband and wife, thank you for clarifying, and you pass away, the property will pass to your spouse. Yes, the property will automatically pass to your spouse if the deed says husband and wife.
And what if both passed away?
If both pass away, you have to go to probate,
Unless you have a trust.
unless it's in the trust. Trust, he goes avoid probate.
So you recommended trust more than will?
So, back in the day, you know, we always talk about it. Life, I don't know if life is better or worse, but it used to be a lot simpler. And back in the 80s, the 70s, even the 90s, people were doing wills because life was simple. And they didn't care if, they said, I don't care if it goes to court. Big deal, let it be public. Nowadays, I strongly recommend a trust. When we started about a decade ago, I want to say we were 60% of the clients probably we were doing wills for, maybe 70. Now, I want to say, I mean, Tony runs the numbers, but you think it's 75 to 80% are trusts? Yeah.
But just to be clear, if I have a will and I pass today, you're saying it has to go to court, even though I have a will that says give everything to my wife, and then the court is going to take 9 months to decide whether that happens or not. What happens, how will my wife have access to my bank account or any assets in those 9 months?
Okay, so the wife, a couple things, thank you. Did everyone hear the question, or do I need to? Okay, thank you. If you have a will, and if you pass away, if your wife's name is on the accounts, then they'll pass to her automatically. Okay, we don't need to go to probate for those accounts. But if you have something in your name alone, and you pass away, then you have to go to probate to get it out of your name. Okay? Now, probate takes 9 months, but we can have an executor appointed sooner. So an executor can be appointed probably in a month. And at the end of the executor being appointed in a month, then they can handle the finances. They can start wrapping things up.
So this applies for a safety deposit box. If it's only in my name, my wife would not be able to open it.
Absolutely. If a safe deposit box is just in your name and you pass away, no one can get to it. You have to go to court and have someone appointed. And if you ever, a piece of advice, if you decide to keep your will, okay, very important, if you decide to keep your will, the absolute worst place you can put your will is safe deposit box. Because let's work through this together. I think you guys know. If someone passes away, the only way to get in a safe deposit box is if they're appointed is if the family has an executor. If the will names the executor, then you need to almost have a court order to get into that box. Okay? Right. Yes.
From a taxation perspective, so between a trust and between just going through the will and passing the money to the family, is there one prefer to the other?
Okay, from a taxation perspective, both, right now, both are equal. You can build tax protection into a will or a trust. I think a trust has a little more flexibility with tax protection, but both can give you the same tax savings. It's just right now, tax savings for a lot of people isn't as relevant because the exemptions are so high.
Question number.
Sure.
As regards the 401k and pensions, although we have listed the beneficiary, first level and second level, do we need to include them on the trust or will?
So if you have beneficiary, well, for a retirement account, so 401k and IRA, during your lifetime, we do not want to put those into a trust. A lot of people say, I'm just going to name my children as beneficiaries. I don't like that. I'd rather you name vehicles in the trust as beneficiary. And the reason I'd want you to name vehicles in the trust as beneficiary is because if you name those vehicles, all right, then it can protect the children. And if there's no questions, I have a couple slides about protecting children, so we'll do those. But please, I'm okay with this forum if people want to ask questions as we go, if that's okay. All right, but that was the perfect segue. So about protecting loved ones. When you're gone, there's four ways to protect loved ones, I think. The four most common ways we see. The first thing is actually what I did for my daughters. It's called divorce protection or bloodline protection. And our bloodline protection we call an access trust. Now, does anyone want to guess the divorce rate right now?
40%. 70.
63. 63% of all marriages end in divorce. Right? I don't want Tony to hear this because she's engaged, so you're one of the 37, buddy. And so what we do, and this is exactly what I have for my daughters, is we put the inheritance in their trust, okay, and it's protected. And when my daughters get older, they'll be in charge of their own money. But if they ever get divorced, their spouse will not get any of the money. And if my daughters pass away, then their children will get their assets, or if they don't have children, their sibling. This is very, very important for legacy building, okay? So if you have an IRA and you have children, you might want to leave the IRA to trust for the children so it's protected from spouses. Now, a second trust we do is called an access trust. I'm sorry, a century trust. This is a trust, the last thing you want. So many times we hear with children that, oh, my son has creditor issues. Oh, there's asset protection issues. What we can do is we can do a sprinkle trust and a century trust. And that leaves the money in a trust, but you put someone else in charge. If you do that and there's a lawsuit, okay, it won't go to the beneficiary, period. It won't go to the creditors. It will be protected from all creditors and it will just go to your loved one. So this is very important to do if people have financial difficulty. And remember, it's not our generation, it's the next generation. We don't want the assets to just go to creditors. Actually, my favorite trust we do at the whole firm, I call it a sprinkle trust. And how cool is this? Let's say we have a child that is taking longer to mature, okay? 45, lives at home, creditor issues, bankruptcy issues, loves to go out every night of the week, gets home 3 a.m., right? If we pass away, what we can do is set it up where that child gets every month a monthly allowance. Because blood is very important, and we want to keep, for our family member, we want to keep food in his belly and a roof on his head, okay? But by doing that too, how cool is this? We can keep food in his belly, roof on his head, but when that child gets to 65, 70, any age, there's gonna be money left. I think that's spectacular to do. That's why we said, when I started out, I said estate planning is empowering your legacy. That's legacy building, what we just did. Now, I know it's a soccer crowd, right? That's what I was told. But has anyone here heard of John McEnroe?
Yeah.
What's he famous for?
Tennis.
And
John-
arguing.
Arguing, right? Probably both, right? Arguing and tennis, right? Very true. Oh, John McEnroe, it was Wimbledon in 1980s, and they asked him, it was raining, so they were interviewing the stars, and they asked him, they said, Johnny Mac, do you think your children will ever be pro tennis players? And he said, my children will never be pro tennis players, because my children suffer from a really bad disease. Does anyone want to guess what disease his children suffered from?
Money.
Well, who said money? Thank you, yeah. His term was affluenza. But Johnny Mac, okay, as they call him, he wanted in his inheritance, or what we do a lot of times, is we put the inheritance in a trust and don't let children get it at too young of an age, right? Yeah, there's an old phrase that a client taught me that it's hard to hunt on a full stomach. We want our kids to earn it. We want it to be mature. We want them to get older, right? The last thing we want is someone to get an inheritance before they're too young or before they're mature. And we could put in substance abuse testing. We could put in you have to have certain grades. You know, we could put in you have to go to counseling. You can put all this. Because again, you want your legacy, you know, to follow your values. You know, if you're here, you have values. You want those honored, right? Yes, sir.
So if you set up a trust and it's a fund that has all the assets in it, what happens after that? I mean, life doesn't stop. You continue to accumulate assets, and do you update the trust, or do you start buying the assets in the name of the trust, or how does it work?
Okay, so the question is, you know, a trust, it's not a picture, right? It's a movie. So if you have assets, and you put your assets in a trust on, what's the date? September 16th, we said, right? And then in a year, you buy another house. Do you have to update your documents? The answer is no. And then you actually answered your own question.
Buy it in the name of the trust.
You were right, you buy it in the name of the trust, okay? That's it. As long as you buy it in the name of trust, you're okay. Okay?
What is the meaning by the name of the trust? It's like a company, like a limited partnership. How is the bank? Okay, if you're taking a loan from a bank to buy a property, how is the bank can change the statement of financial issue for a trust?
Yeah, if you're buying if you're buying a property in your name, you just buy it in the name of the trust, and banks know about the trust. And this type of trust, the difference between this trust and a company is this trust you have full access to.
You mentioned that the probate are more expensive than the trust. Can you give us like a ballpark figure on
Sure.
the prices?
So when we prepare a trust, when we prepare a trust, the fee to set it up is actually a lot more than a will, right? If you prepare a trust, the fee is $6,250, right? A will, it's a little more than a third of that. So it's in the $2,000, $2,500. But when you pass away, you know, on probate and cost, they can add up to $50,000, $60,000, maybe a little less, or it could be as low as 20. You know, with the trust, if you do it right, there might not be any costs.
But didn't you say that you can do the probate while you're still alive?
No. With probate, it doesn't happen until you pass away. I'm sorry if I was confusing.
Because I thought that we can do the probate while you're still alive, take your wife's children to the court, and then just have the judge stamp it and everything?
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. When you pass away, we want your will to go to probate.
So effective, probate means like more effective than. 'cause
Probate-
I understood like into.
So I pass away, with something in my name. I have a bank account worth $10,000 in my name. Or, I'm feeling generous. I have a bank account with $100,000. There's no way, no one is authorized to get that account out of my name. No one can show up at the bank and say, take it. It's my social. So my wife, if I have a will, has to go to the court, okay, and bring the will to court. And they're gonna look at it and say, they're gonna stamp it, right? And when they stamp my will, then she can go to the bank and say, look, I'm allowed to have access over Adam Rubin's accounts. And then that's the probate process. But if it's in a trust, she doesn't have to go to court at all. It happens automatic. Whoever, both people, guys.
401k is in the stock market. If you have a beneficiary, you still want to do it in the trust?
So for 401k, you don't need to put it in the trust during your lifetime, okay? But when you pass away, the 401k can be left to the trust. So, like for my daughters, when I pass away, my 401k is going to each of their trusts, and it's going to be managed by my brother-in-law.
But if I want it to be for my spouse, and she's my beneficiary, I keep it as is, I don't put it.
Correct. Yes.
What about the stock market?
Stocks. You want to put the stocks into the trust.
Yeah.
Okay, did you?
So I had a question when I was talking to someone about trusts. They were saying a quote from Rockefeller saying he owns nothing yet controls everything. I don't know if you've heard that expression before.
No, but we're gonna write that down.
In a kind of a trust setting where you own nothing yet control everything, and the taxes do not apply in a trust or all sorts of stories about that. I don't know if you can elaborate a little bit on that.
So I don't want to speak out of context, but if I had to guess, what Mr. Rockefeller was saying was it was this type of trust. Because by taking it out of his name, but again, he wrote all the rules. It didn't count, so when he passed away, there didn't have to be court and probate, but he wrote the rules, so it's still complete control. I think so. He might have been talking about there's a lot of kinds of trusts. The trust I'm focusing on today is one that avoids probate.
But your group handles most of these kind of trusts.
That's
Including
this area.
There's so many of them that you get lost. Like there's a business trust, and there's a trust that you can kind of avoid taxes and all sorts of crazy stuff.
There's more trust than you can imagine. Yeah. But this is all I do. So if anyone here gets in a car accident and you want to sue someone, I can't help you. If anyone here is going to get divorced, I can't help you. This is only it. So I'm familiar with the trust. Yeah. There's pet trust.
You mentioned that your fee to set up the trust is somewhere around 6,700 rotating. So now all of my wealth does not exceed the 6,000. So my question is, what is an average wealth amount where you can recommend somebody to come to you to set up a trust? I mean, when I hit which number should I come to you?
This is how you know what? This is the Egyptian way. Best friend.
Probably has 20 million.
You know, he's a best friend for Tamim, the king of Qatar. The prince of Qatar.
Your best friend is the king of Qatar?
I did work in Qatar for 12 years.
Imagine Tamim like this.
He owns banks, No, I'm saying, you've mentioned the figure for your fee structure.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, if my wealth is 100,000, is it worth to come to you to set it up trust? Or,
Well,
Joint bank account for you will be fine.
we do wills as well, you know? I mean, it's a personal choice. I think the big thing our firm strives, and I think this is why I get along so well with EHAP and why he asked me to come, is our firm values education. So what I tell everyone, and I'm not here to, you know, I'm here to educate. I'm not here to promote
Yeah,
Levine,
no.
Furman, and Rubin,
of course,
22 minutes away.
I understand.
Open 5 days a week, evening appointment.
Becoming Egyptian yourself.
I understand and I thank you for being here, but the question is probably if I come to you, you will tell me, you know, you're not even worth spending an hour of my time with you.
Absolutely not.
Well, that's
you would-
because you're a kind, generous person.
I think
You will make an advance.
I think the basic question is there a number that makes sense at this point? If I have 100, 200, 300, that's when I start saying, you know what, a trust makes sense. Or it's simply, if I have a single house, small, you know, bank account, should I do a trust?
You know, it's just, and I feel like I'm being a real lawyer because I'm not giving you a straightforward answer, right? But the issue is, if someone had $60,000 in their name, but they had a minor children with some issues, creditor issues, or substance abuse, or special needs, they would need a trust. I think the number one thing, and I'm happy, believe me, to meet with you one-on-one or anyone. And the number one thing is because I don't want to see someone if someone says, oh, a trust isn't for me, and God forbid you go to the hospital, I don't want you not to have a healthcare document or a power of attorney. So that's why, I don't know if there's a minimum. I think that's a personal choice, but I just don't want to see, from a lack of education, someone not have I don't want someone to go, God forbid someone if you get in a car accident and no one can help you. And it's because I told you a trust isn't for you. So you have to understand your options. So if someone has a value of 100,000, is it trust for them? There's a good chance it's not. But is estate planning for them? Absolutely. You know? I mean, we do estate planning and we don't do trust for children leaving for college. Because their parents say, just make sure my daughter has a power of attorney and a living will.
Okay, thank you.
What if does it happen that a will can contradict the trust?
Absolutely.
And if so, which one takes precedence? Which one is, so what happens?
So, can a will contradict the trust? Yes, if poorly drafted. So that's why, the worst thing you could do is try to do this online or, have an issue, because a trust, it should be written consistently. So within the trust, when we do a trust, we revoke your will. You get rid of it. Which one will control? That's for a judge. A judge is going to have to make a ruling on that. It's going to end up in court, it's going to be messy. So when you do a trust, you have to revoke your will, which we do. Yes.
So I want to give a scenario and tell me what would happen very much. So basically, because this is one of the things I hear about, they say that if you are a trustor, right? So let's say I'm afraid that when I am old, if I go to a nursing home, for example, that they would take all my assets and my money to pay for the nursing home. So a lot of people, from what I hear, they put their assets into a trust, and the trustees are their children. So when they are old, I heard that the nursing homes and these kind of hospitals and stuff, they cannot take the assets from the trust if that truster goes to a nursing home. Is that true or a false statement?
So if you have a trust, okay, and it's a Medicaid trust, there's, like I said, someone said it might have been you, someone in the back said there's so many kinds of trusts. So I apologize, I can't remember who it was. One of the trusts we do is is called a Medicaid Protection Trust. And what you do is you put your assets in there and you put someone else in control. So this is a very different kind of trust. And when you put someone else in charge, after 5 years, those assets are not available to the nursing home. So, and you can qualify for Medicaid. So to qualify for Medicaid, a single person can only have $2,000. The nursing homes in New Jersey average around $11,000 to $12,000 a month. So if you go there, you'd have to spend all your money down until you get to $2,000. But what you can do is you can put the money into a trust with your children in charge. This is a different kind of trust, which is okay. And then after 5 years, you do not have to spend that money in a nursing home. So a lot of people do it, yes, it's very common.
So that means you have to wait 5 years?
Does that mean you have to?
No, the 5 years on a nursery.
Nursing home?
So if you put it,
The creation of
Right.
trust.
for putting the assets into a trust. So if you go to a nursing home and we'll say January 1st, 2030, okay? And you have no money in your name. Medicaid will pay for your care, but before they pay for your care, they're going to look back 5 years to January 1st, 2025.
So, just as a follow-up to the same question, so doesn't that same type of trust, still as an irrevocable trust, would protect you for the regular case of just passing away and giving the money to your children and all the other, etc., all the other benefits would still happen automatically with that type of trust as well?
So, can you get everything I spoke about in this trust? And can you get everything I spoke about in this trust, in an irrevocable trust? You can have all the protection. The number one difference between a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust, or the Medicaid trust and this, is if you do a Medicaid trust, you're giving up control. So you don't have it available to you. So if you do a Medicaid trust, you could not use the money.
Oh, you can't.
Right.
Rubin mentioned
Okay.
concerning the house. He said if it's written as husband and wife, then the house is protected. If one dies, it goes to the spouse. But what if both names are on the deed, but husband and wife sentence is not there? What happens if one dies?
So does it say, John, is it Bill and Mary? Is it just Bill and Mary?
Huh?
If it says Bill and Mary, or whoever?
Yeah, the two names.
Okay, then there's the presumption is husband and wife still. You still get the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
If I moved from state,
If you need to leave, myself. Yeah. Okay, good. She's enjoying it. Good. Okay, yeah, we do, well, yeah, we'll skip it. So, we're talking Medicaid, right? Okay.
if I moved from a state to other state, do I have to update the trust?
If I move from one state to another state, do I have to update the trust? No. As long as you're in the States, the trust will work. Now, there might be some quirky intricacies. So when you move to a different state, we're gonna have you meet with someone, or you should meet with someone in that state, just to have the trust reviewed, just to make sure it works as efficient as possible. But you don't need to update it.
Can the trust be modified in the future for any reason?
Can a trust be modified?
Yeah.
If you do the living trust, it can be. This gentleman talked about a Medicaid trust, that you can't modify.
So for a couple, let's say, for example, a married couple who have everything in both their names together, and their intention is for everything to go to the children. If they don't have a trust, how is that going to hurt them?
For a married couple, and they want everything to pass to their children, and they have a will.
Or without, even without a will?
But both names are on all properties.
On everything.
On
Everything.
their
You're
assets.
sharing everything, and they don't have a will or a trust. What's going
And
to happen?
the children's names are on the houses,
No.
No.
so then you have to go to probate.
And what would happen?
If they die together.
Make a lot of money.
No, well, eventually they're both gonna die. You have to go to probate. Yeah, so if you don't have a will and you die with something in your name alone, okay? Then you have to go to probate, and New Jersey has a generic will for you called the intestate statute. It's very costly. There's a very long process to have someone appointed administrator. The administrator will then have to wrap up your affairs for you. You know? And of course you don't get any protection in terms of bloodline protection of sorts.
So until what age for the kids? Like what age for the kids? Like,
No, just to clarify, I'm sorry, Adam, just to clarify, what he's saying is that you and your wife, okay, if you don't have a will, or even if you do have a will, and you both die, right, the kids now will have to go to court. If you pass, then yes, your wife will get everything, correct me if I'm wrong, if both your names are on it. However, after she passes, which she will eventually, the kids will have to still go to court.
Absolutely.
Right.
So the only way to avoid court is to have the kid's name on the assets.
So if you put your kids on every single asset, well, the way to avoid court is to a trust.
Right.
But if you put your kids on every asset, everything, including a property, you can possibly avoid court. But my concern is twofold. One is you're not protecting your children at all, right? Like we went through all those ways to protect the kids. You're giving all of them up because you're not going to have divorce protection. You're not going to have incentive protection. You're not going to have creditor protection. You wipe away all that. The second concern is if you put your children on a home to avoid probate, and your kids get in a car accident during your lifetime, your home could be subject to a lawsuit. And if your children get divorced, your home could be part of their divorce argument. Or if they pass away. I've seen this before. A mother put her daughter in the home. The daughter passed away, and all of a sudden the home was owned by the son-in-law, the daughter's husband. When they went to sell the home, the son-in-law got a good portion of the proceeds. They got the money.
And what's a surrogate letter?
A surrogate letter is another name. So probate is a national concept. Every state has a different name for it. In New Jersey, the surrogate court handles probate. So surrogate, remember I said if you pass away and no one's named executor, then it doesn't matter? When the surrogate court reads the will, they're going to give your spouse or your children a letter which says, surrogate letter. You can add, yes.
do we need to?
One second, make it, let Adam finish the last slide. And then
Okay, and a lot of this was covered, but thank you. So I just want to go over, because we did talk about it, to qualify for Medicaid, the average nursing home in New Jersey is $11,000, right? To qualify for Medicaid, you can only have $2,000 in your name. So if you go, you have to spend all your money, all $6,000 of your money on the nursing home. You then, after 6 months, you then can apply for long-term care, okay, Medicaid. So what a lot of people do is they put assets in an irrevocable trust, and then after 5 years, it'll be protected. Now, if there's any veterans in the room, U.S. veterans? Served in the military, no? Okay. So, if you know anyone who's a veteran, there are a lot of veteran benefits, okay? I think I could talk about the veteran benefits, but maybe we can answer the questions instead, because I don't know how many people care about the veteran benefits. Okay, so, thank you.
Do we need to include the assets value in our will or the trust? Say the house is $1 million, $2 million,
No,
stuff
because
like
it
that?
changes.
You don't need to write asset values in either a will or a trust. A will is public, so we really don't want to write it in there.
I receive, my employers offer some kind of help doing the wills. And the lawyer sent me one time questionnaire that includes values for my assets. So I stopped the process because really I don't know what to do with there. The value of the house when I bought it, or the current value, or 10 years from now, who knows?
So that lawyer did the right thing. To properly plan for you and your family, he or she needs to have a rough idea of the assets.
So the assets, what's number I put it in there?
You can put the value today. Believe me, I promise you, that lawyer, whoever he is, if it's 50,000 more or 50,000 less, it's not gonna change his recommendation. But they need to know it. So don't be discouraged by that, because that lawyer's doing a good job asking you for asset information.
What about the bank account?
They want to know the bank accounts too. And again, approximations. You know, when I have a meeting and I ask someone what's in your bank account, I don't want to know $5,060 and da-da-da. I just want to know around 5,000. They want some, because they want to know, should they be talking about tax planning with the 24 million? Should they be talking about Medicaid planning? When they're going to make recommendations, like my daughters get their inheritance, I have someone in charge of it until they get to 30. And then at 30, they're going to manage it with someone. And at 35, they can fire them. The lawyer needs to make recommendations to you. So if you have $100 million and one child, the lawyer might say, I don't think your child should manage their money until they get to 40 or 45. But that lawyer, whoever they wants to help you. So don't be discouraged by the questionnaire. They did it right.
Thank you.
Of course.
So what would you recommend for this crowd? The average crowd is like married men, family, say from 40 to 60 years old, say 1 to 4 kids. What is the recommendation? Assets, say 200,000 to $10 million, whatever.
Okay. So what I would recommend, the number one thing is the backbone of our firm is education. So you have to, and don't try to do it alone. And it doesn't, I'm not here, I'm here because I feel very lucky for this opportunity to speak. And I consider we're friends at this point, right? So I don't want to insult you, but we're friends.
He's still charging me money.
That's why he's my best friend. But
You want to be friends with us too?
But the number one thing is to get educated. In my heart, I think of trust is better because life is not simple anymore. It's complicated. Look at the world. Watch the news. It's a very divisive world. It's a very divisive country, right? It's scary, right? That being said, if you hear everything and see the benefits, and you say, you know what? A trust isn't for me. I'm more comfortable with the will. I'm willing to deal with the downside, but at least to protect your family. A will is better than nothing. But my recommendation, I always am gonna say, a trust is better. I have minor children. I don't know what they're gonna be. If they have any issues, I like the protection of trust. But at minimum, my recommendation is get educated, learn about the trust, and at minimum, get your affairs in order with a will at minimum.
Right, so, and this trust, say for the husband and wife, how to protect the kids, if they're still minors, within that trust, how to draft that language.
Okay, so, and it's easier for me, the reason I keep talking about my family is because I feel like I've been with you guys for a while now, but I know my family better than I know your family, so it's easier. The first thing you want to do when you have minor children, you have to name a guardian for those children. Okay? The guardian could be anyone you want. You want to pick someone who has experience with kids, right? You don't want to pick you don't want to pick the crazy uncle in Las Vegas, right? But you don't want someone with too much experience with kids. So you don't say, well, my uncle has 8 children. I want my kids to live with him because they'll be child 9 and 10. You don't want that. So it's a middle ground. Then you want to talk about and someone, of course, who has your values. That's very important. Then you want to talk about, for the guardian, you want to talk about someone who, or you want to talk about when they'll get the inheritance. I once saw an 18-year-old child does everyone know Brown University?
Yeah.
Ivy League, right? I once saw an 18-year-old child at Brown University inherit $20,000 and drop out of Brown because they said they're going to be an entrepreneur. So you want to put language, you want to talk, the second part is who are they going to live with? The first part, or the first part is who will they live with? The second part's about the money, right? So you want to put ages in, you want to put rules in, 30, 35.
Okay. And the guardian normally has limits into what he can do and not do.
Absolutely. The guardian has limits, the guardian steps into parent role. So they control who's going to be in charge of the kids. I always say the guardian send a permission slip. That's who the children are going to live with.
Okay, I think we just went past by this point very quick, but I want to go back to it when he said he has some properties overseas. So 2 things. What if you have a will or a trust that involves someone who lives overseas and you want him to be like a beneficiary of the trust or of the will? That's the first question. The second part of the question, what if you have properties overseas and you want to cover it with a will or a trust? Can this be done, or this is like out of jurisdiction?
So the first question is, if you have a beneficiary overseas who's inheriting, I can tell you right now, if you come in and you have a beneficiary overseas who's inheriting, I'm going to pound the table and tell you my strong recommendation is going to be to do a trust. Because you don't want the court involved with an overseas beneficiary. You don't want them regulating it, you just don't want to deal with it. The second is if you own property overseas. Most of the time we're going to have to work with an attorney in that country to make sure the plans are consistent. The number one thing, because it depends on which country it is, the number one thing is you don't want the plans to conflict. You don't want there to be any issue of those sorts.
I know for a fact that Egypt, there are no treaties between Egypt and the US. So you cannot really take a court order in the US and implement it in Egypt.
And there's no well in Egypt too. There is no well in Egypt.
No wells in Egypt?
No.
So
yeah.
we'd have to, and we work with, when you're in New Jersey, we have a lot of clients, we have a lot of Egyptian clients, we have Indian clients, so we're familiar with working with attorneys overseas.
Yeah, but there is no will in Egypt. So.
But there must be, it might pass by operation of law.
Inheritance law or.
So you can't.
It's the Islamic Sharia law, which means a male gets twice the share of a female. So when somebody passes away, the probate court in Egypt, there is a probate court in Egypt, and it will decide who gets what based on the Islamic Sharia law.
So everyone, I guess, is treated the same.
Yes.
Unless you have a power of attorney that gives them the right to
Power of
act on
attorney
it.
does not act
توكيل رسمي. توكيل رسمي عام ولا توكيل رسمي عام يقدروا يتصرفوا
ما يشتغلش بعد وفاته.
بعد الوفاة فلازم قبل يلحقوا لو بعد الشر حصل حاجة.
So he's saying if you leave somebody in Egypt a general power of attorney, they might act on it. And I was telling him a power of attorney
Stops when you die.
Stops
Yeah.
at the point of your death. They cannot break with.
Excited.
So, I guess the easy.
For the sake of Adam's time, I was going to be cognizant of that, guys. Are there any other questions for Adam?
If we,
A discount to me.
I'm sure that Adam would be happy if you have a private, with him,
Is your contact details inside this?
Is it right there? Is our contact on the folder?
The ground, it's right
yes,
there.
yes.
Okay, it's on the folder, yes. Yeah, thank you.
Where is your phone?
Oh, but thank you, but yeah, I'm happy again, it's a privilege to be here, so I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Before I let Adam go, but we do have people that have joined over the internet. I don't know if anybody on the stream would like to ask a question. You guys did not get a chance to ask a question. Anybody on the stream that wishes to ask a question? Samir or Yusuf or anybody?
Were there a lot of people?
No, thank you.
Tamer? Okay, so, yes.
I have a quick question there. How long it takes the process to prepare the trust and file it and complete it?
So preparing a trust and funding it and putting everything in will be about 6 to 8 weeks.
What about the custody of minors in case of death?
Whatever.
Custody?
Yeah, but what, how long does it take to prepare it, or?
When both parents pass away suddenly, who takes the custody of the kid minor?
You have to, we have to put that in a document. You have to put it in a will.
Yeah, but without any will. The court will
The
decide.
court decides. You do not want that.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to.
If you have minor children, you need to get documents in place, like, it's not a luxury, it's not, no, it's, you don't want the court deciding.
Sorry to ask this question.
I know.
Would it be the fee of the trust, if I want to file a trust in your office? Would it be the fee in one time pay at the beginning? Can it be like in different payments?
Normally it's half to start and then half when we're done, but we work with people too.
Well, in my case, it will be 6 different installments, and the last one after I die.
We're gonna have to clean the dishes.
What about the revocable life insurance trust? How long?
An irrevocable life insurance trust, about 6 weeks. Thank you. Guys, let's give Adam a hand and thank you for being here.